Hello, everyone. I'm Talaya Dendy, and you're listening to Navigating Cancer Together, the show that has something for everyone facing cancer. Why? Because everyone is different with different needs, beliefs, and perspectives. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. I encourage you to open your minds and your hearts. Navigating Cancer Together is everywhere, so please make sure to subscribe and follow the show to stay updated with the latest episodes. You can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or your preferred podcast app or platform. Before I introduce our special guest today, I want you to start thinking about this question right now. And the question is, after listening to Dr. Susan's insights on sound therapy, what's one specific way you can implement or incorporate sound into your daily life to enhance your well being? Again, please think about after listening to Dr. Susan's insights on sound therapy, what's one specific way you plan to incorporate sound into your daily life to enhance your well being? So let's get to it. Today, our very special guest is Dr. Susan E. James Hegemeyer. Dr. Susan is a doctor of behavior health, and she has been using specific sound and music systems for creating positive change and restoration for over 25 years, working with people with cancer and immune compromised illnesses, people experiencing chronic pain and cancer related pain, also people in treatment for addiction, trauma, mental health diagnosis, or recovery. During the pandemic, the three Malete programs were transformed to online. And those programs include Getting Good Sleep, Mastering Challenging Times program, which is for anxiety, flying, litigation, medical appointments, and more. The Healing Program for Restoration and the Managing Pain programs all do transformation with sound. Dr. Susan is here today to share details about the power of sound therapy. Dr. Susan, thank you so much for joining us today and welcome.
Thank you, Talaya. It's great to be here.
It is my pleasure, Dr. Susan. Before we really get into the work that you do and all the important benefits of it, please tell me, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great. It's where I am, it's about 70 degrees, so it's feeling good.
Wonderful. I'll take 70 any day. Yes. That's a good reason to be feeling pretty good, I'd have to say, especially this time of year. Dr. Susan, please tell us more about your background. As I mentioned, you have a background working in cancer and immune compromised illness clinics, and as well as pain clinics with patients, many of which were cancer patients. Please share more about your experience and what led you to that work.
So the people I worked with in internal medicine, I did research with the pain patients, and I created programs where they had a system that they listened to specific kind of sound patterns. And then we measured their level of pain, their feeling about the pain and how much it had control over their lives, and also depression related to their pain and anxiety. And what was discovered was that their depression lowered, their anxiety lowered. They were able to gain a set of confidence. So a lot of times when people have, especially chronic pain, they feel like their pain has taken over their life and they manage appointments and grocery shopping, maybe things that other people take for granted to be able to do, that it's more difficult because of their pain. And so they felt that their pain was manageable and they had gained control back over their lives. And then their pain also went down significantly. So that research was for 6 weeks. And I'm imagining that when people use sound to intervene upon the level of pain, over time, it also is exponential, meaning that you build more neural pathways to be ready to listen to the specific sound, and also you're familiar with it, so it works easier and it's quicker. So it has long-lasting properties. The thing about sound is that it's not an intervention like you do it for a minute and then you're done. It becomes part of your life as a support tool, as a wellness tool, as something that is comforting and calming. And the other background that I had working with people with cancer and immune compromised illness is similar, that different sound programs were implemented with the people, and there were amazing responses. People would cry and they would remember things that they had suppressed for a long time. They would say, I feel like I released a lot of burdens. There was a lot of kind of reclaiming and getting in touch with how they really felt in their body instead of holding a lot of emotions and experiences in some things for 20 years or 40 years. And I think part of your question was, how did I get started in that? Which is quite a long time ago. I had a friend that was studying different kinds of rhythms and how they affected our consciousness. And I also always have had an interest in how can we accelerate our kind of spiritual development and inner consciousness in relationship to each other as well as ourselves. So there's something called super learning, which uses sound, and that's from a really long time ago. So I always had this kind of interest in how we can heal and accelerate our being as a whole. So mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. And the sound kind of came together. And as I started using it in different systems, I saw how powerful it was, but gentle in a way and easy for people to do. I always say this is like meditation, and people would often say, well, I don't meditate. I've tried meditating. I can't meditate. Doesn't work for me. And some people even felt like they were a failure because they couldn't do it. They felt like also that they were supposed to sit a certain way, and if they couldn't sit that way, then they were a failure in another way. So one way was with their mind, and another was a body position. And that's another thing that I really like about the sound, is that when people listen to sound, they're able to transfer their consciousness, which occurs through your breathing and your heart rate and your brainwaves all at the same time. And it's very easy, and you don't need to sit in a special position, and it gives you the same benefits, and the benefits are pretty extensive and profound.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Susan. It sounds like it is a very helpful tool for self soothing in those situations where you're just really stressed out or anxious or whatever, and you need to find a way to relax and get back to calm. Is that correct?
It definitely can be. That's one of the applications, and one of the benefits is creating that peacefulness and calmness and connecting to that place that's not external but internal. That a lot of times we have forgotten what that feels like. There's a boosting of the immune system, which is certainly important for people with immune compromised illness. There's a reconnection to resilience, and resilience is about overcoming things that happen to all of us in our lives that can throw us really off course. And there's also a restoration through our neurological system. So when people experience trauma, and certainly cancer is a trauma, but I'm talking about trauma that might have happened as a child or later in life, that when we listen to certain kinds of music, it helps us release that trauma that's held in the neurological system. So also simultaneously, when we access that place where we're feeling really good and relaxed, we're creating new neural pathways, which is called neurogenesis. And this is really to me, this is like the star in a way. It makes us have epigenetic responses, which means we have the ability to no longer have a proclivity for getting certain diseases, mental and physical diseases. So it's shifting our propensity for those degenerative conditions, and they're pretty extensive. So there's cancer, immune compromised illness, addiction, heart disease, which is the leading killer in the world, diabetes, and then there's Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia. Those are other things that people are also very concerned about, as well as anxiety and depression. And then there's schizophrenia, bipolar. You get the idea that there's all these illnesses that are caused from stress. When we have stress, we get too much cortisol because stress releases cortisol. So when we listen to the music, it helps us release or diminish that cortisol production. And we also get dopamine and serotonin, which help us feel good. They're called the feel good chemicals. So there's so much happening there. It's pretty spectacular. And of course, I don't want to present that you can listen to music and then go eat a bunch of junk food. And it doesn't really work that way. It's a whole care system. So, of course, eating healthy, getting exercise, those are also benefits that are going to contribute in a holistic way to the transformation of the human condition getting sick.
Thank you so much for sharing that information. You mentioned meditation. Please just dive a little bit more, Dr. Susan, into, how is sound different than using meditation?
The difference is if you meditate without sound, then you are listening to your own inner thoughts and becoming mindful of observing those thoughts. And so that was often the thing that was a deterrent for people because we have a lot of mind chatter that's going on, millions of times, thoughts about all kinds of things. And that often is very challenging for people to have that mind chatter because it feels like it just doesn't go away. And I've also had people who do meditation and people who have been using mindfulness for years and really rely on it go, wow, using sound really is quicker. And it was way easier because the sound, there's something called entrainment where you have certain rhythms that you resonate with when you hear them. And you're forming a relationship so that you come into harmony with those sounds. And when you do that, it changes your breathing and your brain waves and your heart rate at the same time. So it's easier to fall into or to allow that to happen than listening to the mind chatter. So the sound becomes preeminent to your mind. So that's kind of the difference. They both have the same goal of transferring our consciousness into this restorative state. However, ancient cultures understood that sound was very potent and would use it to bring groups of people together, also to harmonize that group together. And I recommend that people, if they're going to use a sound program, to share it with other people that would agree to abide by listening for a certain period of time and being still, because it also creates harmony with those other people and you. So it's very conducive to sharing.
Nice. That makes it even better. Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Dr. Susan, you spoke a little bit about research. Do you have more research that people can refer to if they're interested in learning more about this?
I have a lot of blogs on my website, and there is bucket loads of research. So there's two kinds of blogs. There's the video, and then there's the written part of the blog. So if they really want the research, all the research is at the end of those written blogs. So each blog will have different research, but there's a lot of research about the transformative qualities of shifting over into this restorative state where we change our brain waves, and also on music and sound and how that is useful. There is a lot of different things on YouTube that people can listen to. And it's also kind of having a system that you use where you go through different steps and stages to gain more information with the sound.
Dr. Susan, what is your website and where can people find it?
The website is the number three and then melete.com. And if it's the blog/blog, and also the videos are on my same YouTube channel, Three Malete Healing, Sound Healing.
Three Malate Healing, Sound Healing programs. You have several different programs, which I want to get to in a little bit here because I think that's important. Are there any additional benefits to using specific sound systems that you haven't mentioned already, Dr. Susan?
Yeah, I would say generally that they do help to calm us so that we are able to sleep better. And it also connects us to our inner spirituality, our inner self, which is a very personal but very powerful place for us because sometimes we feel disconnected from that. And also, I say to our intuition and our ability to develop insight and problem solving. And what that means, that is another kind of an evolutionary thing like epigenetics, which is when we have the ability to gain insight and use our intuition differently, because in a lot of ways we've been trained by absence that that isn't valuable. And so when we are able to trust that and develop that, and to also insight can be about looking at a group of things and gaining something through insight that you can't get from those individual parts that is not present. So to me, that is also another way that we would be leaping our evolution in a way and honoring and developing that ability as part of our spirituality.
That's so important. And I think that when you're going through, different challenges in life, either your spirituality can be heightened or it can be questioned and attacked, so to speak. So it's really good to have tools like sound to help with that and to help people get back in tune with those things.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree that it can plummet us to think, where is my spiritual support system? Why did I get this?
Mhm.
So, yes, it's reconnecting and it's really a feeling awareness. So, it's connecting to feeling and how we feel in our body and knowing and being able to interpret that, because a lot of times we are sort of blocked from that. So, it's kind of settling in to a deeper place.
I found a quote. Actually, it was on your social media, and I thought it was so interesting. Edgar Casey is quoted as saying, "Sound will be the medicine of the future." Again, sound will be the medicine of the future. And that really made me stop and just really think about this. So, Dr. Susan, how do you see sound therapy evolving in the coming years? And what role do you envision it playing in healthcare?
If you look at how our culture develops, it's always the fringe that starts exploring something, and then more people want to participate in it, and it sweeps across the culture. And that's really what's happening. What also is happening when that happens is that there's a lot of stuff that might not work as well, or it's not used in as deep a way or have as many applications. So as we continue, there'll be more research, and it will become mainstream and there'll be more and more applications. So I also know that our voice, our physical voice is very powerful. And there are people doing other kinds of research in the world besides specific rhythms that I'm using in certain tones and patterns. People are researching how the voice can be used, and we'll see, I think, extraordinary advances. And also, I'm involved with using certain kinds of chanting that help also release trauma and help work with people who are in the process of dying and supporting people in those different stages. So there's lots of stuff happening out there in lots of different ways. And yeah, it's going to blow up. It's going to get bigger.
And it's so interesting that you mentioned using it to transition because death doulas are on the rise, and a lot of people are investing in death doulas to help them or a loved one transition. So it's really interesting to just see how those two come together if they do at all. in the future?
I suspect there'll be some people who are a death doula who would be interested in using certain sounds, maybe with their own voice or employing certain music to help transition. So it's also about helping the spirit move to the highest place to help facilitate compassion and forgiveness. And that's actually another piece of the sound programs that I have, not the Getting Good Sleep or the Managing Pain program, but some of the other programs have components of forgiveness using sound and compassion development and other things within those programs, because those are also very potent and important things that we make peace with in ourselves, because otherwise it can be sort of a toxicity about certain thoughts or events that we have, and we often don't have compassion for ourselves.
Yes, that's so true. Self compassion is key. You talked about this a little bit in the beginning, and you had indicated sound is not something that you just do one time. Share a little more about the benefits between using sound once or continuing it more than once. So, not just using it as a one time intervention. Please explain more about that because people may need more context as to how that works and what to expect if you use it once versus making it a part of your daily life.
Well, I'll give you an example. So I'll use myself. Most people don't like to go to the dentist. And so if you have a certain sound pattern that you've been using that you use to relax yourself, you can use that while you're at the dentist. So you are in a relaxed state. So what happens is you become familiar with how that sound unfolds like a musical piece. And when you first hear it, you immediately take a deep breath and you start relaxing. And so you have a relationship with that particular music that's like a tool or a friend that you know you can rely on because it has a benefit and effect. If you use it once, you may hear it and go, that's lovely, or I liked it. And hopefully you would like it. You wouldn't choose it if you didn't like it, but you're not going to be able to plug into it in that deeper way unless you create a relationship with it. So having that relationship can be very meaningful, especially if we're going into something, could be pre-surgery or some other situation where we're anxious. Having that relationship with that particular music is really helpful. And then in terms of listening to music to get into that sound space, the place where we're in a meditative state, that's where you get all those benefits of the epigenetics and the intuition and the interconnection and the resilience building and dopamine and serotonin and lessening of cortisol. So consistently, I raise my hand. Yes, I want all those things, and I don't want to be in a state where I'm almost inevitably going to get one of those diseases, given the history of people's health. If you look at the insurance industry, they're kind of built around how many people are going to get these diseases, because part of the diseases are probably set into our system by experiencing traumas. And when we connect to those states regularly, so that's the key. It's like exercise. When we connect regularly, then we get those benefits. So that's a lot of incentive to have a consistent relationship.
Yes, I can see that as you talk about it more because there's just so many benefits to it. I also look at it as self care as well. So,
Right. Yeah, definitely. When you listen to certain music before you go to sleep, you can sleep better. It's easier to get to sleep. And you're also disconnecting from the screen and things that might be just kind of disruptive to sleep.
yes, so true. So true. Oh, the screen thing is a huge issue for a lot of people at this, point in time. It's really tough. One thing I would like to know, and some people out there may be wondering too, is What is something that people often misunderstand about your work and your programs?
I'd say that they think that it's the same as going to something on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not to say that there are beneficial sound programs you can listen to on YouTube. And I use some of the YouTube ones for they have like music to calm dogs, and there's all kinds of stuff on there. So those can be helpful. However, having a system that you have certain things that you're doing with the sound, you call them different unfolding strategies. There's also in those programs, there's a lot of different journals and ways to record information and questions that are asked to help stimulate people to notice patterns and to get benefits, the programs. So, for example, the healing program has, like I said, the compassion component, and there's exercises in there that go with the particular sound that is connected with the exercises for developing compassion.
Interesting. Okay. Susan, do you want to say any more about a specific program that maybe people listening to this podcast may benefit from?
I'd say since your audience has an interest in healing and overcoming cancer and immune compromised illness, is that to be gentle and to offer compassion to yourself and your journey, and often how we treat ourselves, it radiates out to those around us and we become models. And so, as a person who has something that has this kind of scary name on it, it also means that you're a powerful role model.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Someone listening has just received a cancer diagnosis or they're struggling to complete treatment. Well, what would you say to them about healing?
I would say that healing has different components to it, that it's body, mind, emotions, and spirit, and to attend to all those areas and to look at sleep and to look at listening to sound as a method, as a tool for working with yourself, and look at how you're eating and consuming food. And also, for some people, directly diving into trauma may be too much. And so the sound can also help to relax and release some of tension from trauma without directly approaching it, which may open the door to approach it or may can just continue to release it from the system.
Dr. Susan, is there anything else that you would like to share about your program, the work that you do?
I want to say I thank you, Talaya, for having me on your program, and thank you for the work you're doing in helping people know that there are many things that they can do to support themselves and also for very profound changes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Susan. It is an honor. I want to thank you so much for joining me today, for your time, and all of that wonderful and very helpful information that you've shared. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Audience and valued listeners, I would like to remind you of the question that I have following this episode. After listening to Dr. Susan's insights on sound therapy, what's one specific way you plan to incorporate sound into your daily life to enhance your well being? And you've heard all the wonderful benefits of sound therapy. So take some time to learn more about this powerful tool. It's something that you can use to really help you in those stressful times, to help you relax, reduce anxiety, depression, all of those things that can creep up on us. Before we end, I'd like to give a shout out to the Navigating Cancer Together community and valued listeners. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you're interested in joining the Navigating Cancer Together community, subscribe to our newsletter to be the first to hear about new episodes, exclusive content, and more. I will put the link to join that newsletter in the show notes as well. That is it for this Wednesday. And until next time, let's keep navigating cancer together. Take care.